this. It is no accident that the primary motive, the hidden agenda in any relationship, is the yearning to return. And the way that I interpret this is the return to self. What I think is really interesting about relationships, on one hand, I think it's what makes relationships so difficult, but also I think there's a miracle in this, and that is that after the attraction, of course, after the honeymoon stage, there's going to be contrast. There's going to be differences. There's going to be things you discover about this person that activate you, right? And I'm not just talking about the way that he doesn't put the toothpaste cap back on, or her spending habit, or his dirty socks on the floor, or the way that she chews. I'm talking about activation from uh, childhood wounds. I'm talking about activation from different attachment styles, that kind of stuff, right? Stuff that is tied to our story. If you don't work through that activation, then of course the relationship dies. You run or numb, find someone else, and this pattern happens where you just the only thing that changes is faces, right? If you work through the activation using your relationship as it would be like an emotional mental gym, if you will, right? Putting in a lot of reps, reviewing your story and why you do what you do. And as two people work through this activation, then on the other side of that, because what happens is then the relationship container they build becomes greater than its parts. The relationship becomes not only safe but healing. And this is what I believe is the miracle of relationships. The the relationship that you build with someone, assuming it's healthy and people are working on themselves as well as the relationship, it starts to heal people. It gives people corrective experiences. And the return, I think James Hollis is talking about, is this piece where as you heal in relationships, you start to return back to self. The relationship itself can disconnect you, especially early on if the relationship isn't healthy. But if you learn how to repair from ruptures, if you learn how to communicate and process, and if both of you work on the relationship, on the other side of this, there's a connection to self. I think it's one of the most beautiful things about relationships because it reminds me of like the circle of life. Anyway, this is called Don't Ask Yourself What You've Learned from Your Relationships. As we explore and work through our attachment and childhood wounds, by the way, this is by me, written by me, understanding how that shows up in who we choose to love and how we love, as we understand the value of love, the miracle, and that it is earned. And in order to experience it, we must continuously work on our relationship with self, healing and growing and taking ownership, which is a lifelong journey. We must also start to look back and ask ourselves what we have learned from all our expired relationships. We cannot reposition ourselves for new love if we haven't learned from our previous love. But don't ask yourself what you've learned. Instead, ask yourself what those relationships have taught you. I know it's subtle, but there's a difference and it's huge. When you ask yourself what you've learned, ego can kick in, right? Ego can hijack you. He didn't learn shit, so why should I, right? What did you learn can feel forced and be lined with a reprimanding, pushing your face in spilled milk. You did something wrong, or more damaging, there's something wrong with you. It leaves room for a harshness, which leads to closed fists and resistance. Now, on the other hand, what did the relationship teach you, right? If you ask yourself, what did the relationship teach me? That releases ego and sets you higher. It gives you a breath, A reset, it grants you acceptance, helps remove the urge to rip out that chapter of your life. There's a reason, or there was a reason. And that's the key that unlocks. Knowing that there was a reason. If you don't believe the relationship has taught you anything about yourself or love, then there's no reason, right? And then without a reason, it was a waste. You want to rip out that chapter, all that hurt and pain for what? Obligated sex and shared chores. You must know the reason why this person came into your life and why you came into theirs. And the way into that is to know what the relationship has taught you. This knowing slash reason is what will get you to accept, to forgive, to embrace, to feel gratitude for, to truly let go, and finally, to love again. What did that relationship teach you? What did that relationship teach you? What did that relationship teach you? So here are some of my expired relationships. Here are some lessons from my expired relationships. And now, listen, there's 1,000 micro lessons in every relationship, but here are the main ones that have changed my love. Remember, the more specific, the better. So, in my 20s, here's the lesson: the lightning may actually be dysfunction. My first dance with love and relationships were predictable, like so many. I chased feelings and loved with my eyes, believing those feelings would carry us. I thought I could see why I was attracted to someone, but had no idea there was something more powerful running underneath that drew us. The lightning in the bottle was actually dysfunction, an animalistic predator, prey, Al Anon addict, instinct hardwired from our stories. I was attracted to women I could control, but also would take care of me emotionally and sexually. Women who had something taken from them as a child, maybe their voice, their childhood, their virginity, and it wired them a certain way. They became prey, and I was the predator. The purpose of my early relationships was to teach me this. It was like learning the world was round. What I thought was a cape was actually kryptonite. It changed everything, how I saw love and the absolute power of what I call today the sticky. This learning was the beginning of me examining attraction to make sure it's coming from a healthy place so I can make better choices. If not, love will always be reckless. So the teaching in my 20s was, was knowing what kind of people I was drawn to and what kind of people were drawn to me, because that gave me the gift of choice. Now, in my 30s, what I learned, or the topic was, is it a playground or a prison? So let me explain. My 30s is when I learned how to give women orgasms. It was officially the sex ed chapter of my life. Love taught me the sensitivities of a woman's body, but also that women can have just as high as libidos as men, if not higher. Love taught me about fantasies and role play and kink, and that sex could be a vast playground without shame and stigma. You can turn the lights on. Toys don't make you less than. But it also taught me that there is a ringing bell. We have to go back to class, or sex can be a way to numb and hide from life and true intimacy. Sex can be consuming, turning love into skin hunger instead of soul connections. Both can exist, but also both must exist, or the playground turns into a prison. And love is never free or hits higher notes. So the teaching in my 30s was knowing what is healthy sexual expression, right? Coming from self love, connection, and expression. And what is quicksand? Coming from addiction. In my 40s, what I learned about, or what love taught me, was ruptures and repair and the importance of them, especially the repair. My 40s is when I truly experienced repair and the healing power of it. Repairing emotional ruptures is where corrective love experiences truly live. Most, especially in our early years, do not have the ability to repair in a healthy way. I know I didn't. In my relationships before Vanessa, who I met at age 44, yes, fights were addressed, but were they truly repaired? And as I'm reading this, think about all your previous relationships and ask, or maybe the one that you're in now, are the fights actually repaired, or are they just pushed aside? Are they ignored? Is it just patchwork that's happening? Right. I have a horrible habit of talking things to death, or at least until I feel it's resolved. But in actuality, I was just dumping on my partner. This was the pattern. This was usually the pattern. In order for healing to occur, people need to feel safe, heard, and understood. Usually, we suppress, minimize, and overrule, leaving our partner to feel the complete opposite. Or we compartmentalize and ignore the true issue. There's just a lot of patchwork, as I was saying. Both parties need to feel even closer and more trust after the argument. I want to explain this a little bit. Uh, Fights can actually heal us as long as we're fighting without fighting, as long as the fights are healthy and we are using tools to communicate and pulling from compassion and empathy and love and not fear. Fights can be the medicine. Fights can heal us. They can give us corrective experiences. I mean, after the fight, and what that can produce, what fights can produce is understanding and trust. If that's not happening, then it's just a matter of time before the plane goes down. You know, I think both parties need to feel even closer and more trust after every argument. If not, the rupture was not repaired. So the learning in my 40s was without the ability to repair, and that ability is both our own responsibility to work on, not just one person. The relationship will never deepen and grow. In my 50s, love is greater. This is the learning. And listen, I'm only 51, but I am technically in my 50s. And I'm learning that love is greater than my own wants, needs, and desires. It doesn't mean for me to ignore them. I'm not saying that we should self abandon, right? Of course, we all have desires and needs and wants, and they're all very important. It just means that there's more to love. Love, healthy love with autonomy, safety, and trust built into the fabric, not just the foundation over time, then allowing that blanket to heal you, lifts the love and rewires you from the inside out. Assuming both parties are actively working on themselves, the love then grows greater than its parts. The kite is now in the sky and doesn't require the sprint. What forms is a spiritual container. Fights that felt like life or death seem petty. We learn how to self soothe and reparent. We connect back to ourselves through the relationship, which initially pulled us apart from self. We partner instead of possess. Love grows up, or more accurately, love grows us up, or more accurately than that, love heals us. And this is what I'm learning about love, that the miracle of love and relationships, and I'm not saying that it's easy, is that it can heal you. And took me many decades to learn this, but this is where I'm at today. And if you believe this, if you experience this, there is this kind of like tipping point where I believe not only do is love like something like an action or something that we not only want but give, but we become love, right? I think there's a tipping point where and listen, it's not like I'm in that state. I haven't I might have kind of tapped into it here and there. I'm still at the early stages, but I have this theory that if you are building a healthy relationship, not only with your partner but yourself over time, I think there's a tipping point where it's not even about loving someone, but it's just about being love, right? That love, you start to become love. I know it sounds kind of abstract, but I think that's the spirit of a love. I think that's the higher notes. I think that's what's created when we learn all our love lessons from all our expired relationships, and we start to bring someone healthier to the table. Anyway, thank you for listening. And if you have time, I would love a review on my podcast. It's something I know that I should ask for, and I know that it's hard to review podcasts because who's got the time? But I'd really appreciate a review. And if any of these words landed for you today, share it with someone who you think needs to hear this. Thank you for listening. Be well.